Okay, welcome one and all back to the Mind's Eye Inquisition. Boy, do we have plenty to cover for today. Docket number 009. Case file, M3Gan 2.0 flop. A case study in cope and cringe. So, I am Inkarnate, your Inquisitor General of the Mind's Eye, welcoming you back to the Mind's Eye Inquisition. On tap for today is a news network kicking up dirt and calling it smoke for the fire in a desperate pitch for relevancy. As your lead inspector on this case, if you've heard it through the grapevine, it's my job to trim the hedges. In case you missed the smash hit that was M3Gan sequel, that's because it didn't happen. What a pity. Not only did its native studio Blumhouse hope that they had a safe bet on their hands, considering the 2025 ain't been too kind to the House of Blum, what with Wolfman's failure opening up the year and exposing Lee Winnell as a one-hit wonder, and other failures like The Woman in the Yard failing to resonate. The studio was in dire need of a triumph, so halfway through the year, they were left desperate for a hit, and all they had to settle on was a dud. Let's get into it. First, I'd like to tackle the first film, just because I had always found that one overrated as all hell. I didn't think it was any good. I didn't think it was anything to write home about. Yet, there was all of this alleged hype, which to me always felt fabricated. And I'll get into why I find that to be the case. Now then, the marketing for the first one was not organic at all. You had SNL do a really, well, SNL and unfunny, those two go together. So if I were to say that the skit that they did wasn't humorous at all, you would expect that. But just keep something in mind. SNL didn't do that skit because of the popularity of this franchise or that film. No, SNL is owned by NBC, which is owned by Universal, which is the studio behind the M3Gan movie. So let's not assume that they weren't doing marketing by doing that skit. Then you had the corny TikTok dance, which I'm sorry, like you don't see. Here's the thing. I found that whole TikTok dancing crap from other franchises. Like you saw that in the Resident Evil show. You obviously saw that with She-Hulk. Honestly, as stupid as it is, I can at least admit that the dance from the Wednesday show did resonate with people, where you saw them mimicking that same dance routine. Not the case with this with M3Gan. I always almost call her Annabelle. It's so funny. And then you had a lineup of dolls doing the stupid weird dance from the movie at a football game, center field. Jesus, man. It's just like they go out of their way to try to force this impression that this film was trendy and topical and popular. Yeah, but if you have to try so hard, is it really? So that brings us neatly to the sequel. Dude, the thing that I find so funny, and we're going to get into what the cope is around, the excuse for making the rounds over why it is that M3Gan 2.0 wasn't the box office smash that people were expecting it to be, especially the studio. We're gonna get into that, but it's the funniest thing to me that nobody wants to acknowledge what is as plain as day of what was right in front of them. The sequel, based on the trailer, was an utter Frankenstein of ill-fitting ideas. You had musical numbers, air gliding scenes, gunplay, military experiments. This is a Killer Doll movie, right? Like it's so wild to me that no one was commenting on this. Maybe people weren't into this movie because they don't know what the hell it was. And clearly, considering all the different and disparate ingredients that the studio was just going to ham fist into this, I don't think that Blumhouse knew what this movie was either. I mean, and the question needs to be asked because clearly no one else is bringing up these lines of inquiry. Honestly, how is it that you make the jump from a movie that's supposed to be a female version of Chucky all the way to Terminator? Like, would that be a connection that if the Megan movies didn't exist, would anyone think to make those connections? Killer Doll all the way up to Killer Robots. No. You've never thought of that if you're listening to this, you've never drawn the connection between a Chucky movie and Terminator, and those two movies came out in the same decade. Were those two dots anything that anyone would have connected in their mind if it wasn't for this movie? And hey, considering the failure of this sequel, maybe there's a reason why no one would think to do that. Honestly, they tried to make, with all the action and, you know, the gunplay and all this crap, they tried to make a G.I. Joe movie out of a Barbie doll. And seriously, they thought with this premise that they had not just a blockbuster on their hands, but that they could release this in the summer. Why? Because one half of Barbenheimer did it, a year or two ago? And for those podcasters, YouTubers, content creators, film critics, for those shocked that a M3Gan franchise is DOA after just one sequel, you people clearly have not been paying attention to Blumhouse's series. Let me give you a quick history lesson. Failed franchise. Oh, no. Before we get to that, failed trilogies. Happy Death Day was considered, oh my god, this like amazing movie and such a novel concept for slashers. Okay, it was overrated as hell. Didn't make as much money. And look, I don't give a crap. The lint in a belly button, pennies under a couch budget that this movie had. You're not really saying much, and it's always the same story when it comes to Blumhouse. Oh my god, such and such movie made 10 times the budget. Dude, do you find it when you think about your favorite movies, do you really care how much money they made? Good. I get that it's a business. That's great. I understand that if a movie makes a lot of money, that's a big deal. But is that what people remember about it? Is that what keeps these movies relevant? Is that what makes blockbuster or memorable movie moments? Is that what makes for icons? How's about the scenes? How's about the characters? How's about how you relate to them? How's about the scares? You'll never get that from a Blumhouse movie, let alone something like Happy Death Day. And because the first movie was so overrated, when Blumhouse inevitably came back for a sequel, what happened? Oh, that's right. Wasn't as good as people thought it was. And instead of celebrating a Happy Death Day, the only death that existed was the death of their wants for a trilogy. Same thing happened with Sinister. Oh my god, this movie is like, it's like our own boogeyman. Oh, Blumhouse does it again. Yeah, really? So why is it that by the time that they came back to a second movie, it made less than the first one, and their Slender Man ripoff never became a trilogy either? And that's just one. I'm sorry. That's the failed trilogies is just one category where Blumhouse has failed. I'll keep going. How about forced franchises? Once again, that studio was desperate to make every film a series. So what happened with the movie Unfriended and The Gallows? They overrated the fact that these movies cost X amount to create and made X amount at the box office. Good. So when they swung around and forced sequels that nobody asked for, guess what? They failed. Dude, just because a movie coincidentally might make money, that is not the audience begging for there to be a sequel. There have been plenty of horror films that I've seen that should have stayed as a single movie. And guess what? As great as Texas Chainsaw Massacre and the original Halloween are, those movies should have stayed singular. Please believe that rule absolutely applies to anything that's being churned out from the meat grinder that is Blumhouse. But let's keep going. Hey, how about classic horror trilogies? Everybody loves, speaking of Halloween, everybody loved Halloween 2018. And guess what? That movie built nothing for the trilogy that Blumhouse wanted, so they were just grasping at straws by the time of Halloween Kills and certainly by the time Halloween Ends. And after Halloween 2018, every successive sequel that came after made less and less money. Oopsie daisy. Oh, but we're just getting started in terms of how that studio treats classic horror films that they managed to get their money-grubbing hands on. Hey, what happened with The Exorcist Believer? Oh, that's right. Instead of them failing by number 2, as we've described with all these other films, they crapped the bed from the jump with The Exorcist Believer. But let's keep that train going. How has 2025 been treating the House of Blum? Oof, that Wolfman series that everybody thought, all Universal monsters from here on out should dispense with the summer blockbuster treatment of The Mummy 2017, and they should all be low budget like The Invisible Man 2020. Well, they tried that with Wolfman, and guess what happened? Yeah, Lee Winnell was sent back to the doldrums where he belongs because The Invisible Man 2020 was overrated as hell, and it was a one-hit wonder for him. So long. But that's not the only surprise that Blumhouse had for them in 2025. How's about that Woman in the Yard? Man, you probably forgot that movie even came out this year. So guess what? Blumhouse actually is not the studio to handle a dark universe reboot, and they have no business handling dark fantasy either. So that leaves the remainder of 2025, and believe you me, if they were hoping that M3Gan was going to give them box office receipts or make bank at the theaters, or they were hoping for their first big hit of 2025, now they have the sequels of The Black Phone out on October 17th and Five Nights at Freddy's Part 2 coming out December 5th to eke out any kind of W for this year. Good luck with that. So, now I would love to direct your attention to an article that came up recently. Let's take a look. So, we have here, we thought an article on Bloody Disgusting titled, "We Thought M3Gan Was Like Superman." Jason Blum shares honest thoughts on M3Gan 2.0 failure. You can always rely on Bloody Disgusting because they are always so ready, willing, and able to play damage control whenever especially Blumhouse movies fail to resonate. So, as a scapegoat, Jason Blum, who is the producer behind the M3Gan films, as well as the owner and operator of Blumhouse Studios, he references M3Gan 2.0's release between 28 years later and Jurassic World Rebirth. Get this. He says, "Right now, I do think there's too much horror in the marketplace, but for right now, I don't think that the market can absorb as much horror as there is for sure."
Bitch, please! How much we gonna rock? Then we gonna roll. Then we let it pop. Don't let it go. X gon' give it to ya.
Let's get something crystal damn clear. If you can't compete with the big boys, then your contribution to the genre is a joke. So let me see if I understand you. You can't compete with blockbusters or other horror movies. So why the summer release for M3Gan 2.0? I don't see other films crying or coping the way that Blum is for this latest embarrassment. It's astonishing that this toad is allowed to get away with using such anemic excuses for his own failures. And dude, nobody calls him out on that. Like, this is nonsense. And hey, this isn't the first time that they released one of their franchise films in the summer because they thought that they had a sure bet with a sequel. It happened with Insidious 3, and guess what? It's the lowest domestic box office of that franchise. And honestly, what a contradiction that allegedly, and this is the big hyperbole going on. This is the big excuse why M3Gan 2.0 failed. It's complete hypocrisy that allegedly crowds didn't turn out because M3Gan 3 is no longer horror. And then there's the excuse that crowds didn't turn out because M3Gan released when there's too much horror out. Idiocy. Is it a horror movie or is it not? Like, you don't get to flip and flop, go back and forth with whatever's convenient for you. If it's no longer horror, what's the problem with other horror films being out? That doesn't make any sense. And of course, this clown gets no pushback, despite the fact that he's clearly talking trash. Moving on. The quote continues, "I really hope that people continue to take creative risks within the walls of their franchises. Otherwise, movies will feel all the same." The shift from horror to action is neither creative nor a risk. Pay attention, kiddies, because I'm about to give you a history lesson here. Dead Space tried that exact same thing. Alien tried it. Resident Evil tried it. Jurassic Park tried it. And the list goes on. From the transition from horror to action, guess what? You have seen that in The Mummy. You've seen that in Blade. You've seen that in Underworld. You saw that in 28 Weeks Later. You saw that in Evil Dead. Again, it is not a risk just because you failed. And you were looking for a safe bet, and guess what? It backfired on you. And him claiming that, oh, well, I hope that people take risks. Otherwise, movies run the risk of feeling the same. Hold up. Feeling the same, really? You must be referring to how you wanted your sequel to feel the same as Terminator 2, you unoriginal hack. Oh my God. It is outlandish and egregious how this guy, Jason Blum, is just allowed to speak utter nonsense and he gets zero pushback. Let's keep it going. So, getting back to the first film and its manufactured hype, I gotta ask the question, who bought this doll? Do you find it's like, where was the merchandising here? And I ask that question because keep in mind, the first and second M3Gan movies, these were PG-13 films. Now, what demographic is that film rating usually meant to appeal to? Families and kids, right? My God. The cast was predominantly women. The men only appeared in M3Gan to be killed, to be killed by the doll. Like, let's be serious. You find it strange that nobody picked this doll up for no toy company picked up this doll to market it. Really? You find that a little odd? You didn't see this doll like anywhere. You're not on store shelves, and why would that not be the case if it is indeed the hit that you want people to think that it is? Curious. And look, either it's the case that these people are stupid or they're that big of liars regarding this character's popularity. It's a doll. You didn't think to make it a doll, or is it that it wasn't as popular as you wanted people to believe that it is? Furthermore, whom have you seen dress up as this doll for October 31st? We have had 2 Halloweens since the original film's release. No one that you've seen has dressed up like this doll. In fact, based on the picture you're seeing now, the only person you saw playing dress up as M3Gan was the male producer behind the film, one Jason Blum. You heard that right. A grown man literally got dolled up in a wig, makeup, in stockings, and a dress. I'm sure his wife's boyfriend got a kick out of that. Honestly, this publicity stunt, did this sell even one extra ticket for this movie? You know, with so many people looking forward, wondering what the flop that is M3Gan 2.0 means for the future franchise, I'm the only one looking backward asking, doesn't this mean that the first film was overrated from the jump? Because I can assure you, with only earning $10 million in its opening weekend versus the 90 plus million that the first movie made domestically. Again, the first movie made 90 plus million. If the hype and the interest was actually there, even with a genre changer from horror to action, you're telling me that they could only eke out $10 million in their opening weekend. Yeah, that's more suspect than the masculinity of this film's producer. Moving on. Oh, God. So earlier in this article, the quote from Jason Blum reads, "We all thought M3Gan was like Superman. We could do anything to her. We could change genres. We could put her in the summer. We could make her look different. We could turn her from a bad guy into a good guy. And we kind of classically overthought how powerful people's engagement was really with her." Yeah, you got that right. And that's how we ended up with Gerard Johnstone's M3Gan 2.0, which takes a Terminator 2 approach, yada, yada, yada. M3Gan is the Terminator. She's Superman. Dude, this just goes to show the utter insecurity with this property. You have to compare her to other icons for relevancy because she's pretty much void of an identity. Like, if she's able to stand on her own, why can't she just stand on her own? Yeah, when It 2017 came out, and that is what an instant icon looks like. Were there comparisons between Bill Skarsgård's performance and that of Tim Curry's? Yes, but guess what? Those were comparisons between two good portrayals. The 2017 film did not require comparison to the 1990 miniseries in order for it to be relevant or good or in the conversation. It was actually able to make carve its own path. And guess what? Now you have two good portrayals instead of this incessant need to say, hey, we're just as good as that guy over there. I mean, honestly, Blumhouse wanted to artificially turn M3Gan into a superhero. They wanted to do that. And why? They diluted themselves into believing that they could compete with summer blockbusters. And now they want to cry foul like, oh, oopsie doopsie, I guess we couldn't. Who could have thought that this would be a problem? Again, they saw how much money that the first one made, and they thought, because they made money at the box office, that they had a blockbuster franchise on their hands. You get what you deserve. And they wanted to go that route. They wanted to crack into action and superhero comparisons and all that because they were stupid enough to think that because they had that in their head where they want to make superhero money, that the audiences will react the same way. Idiotic. And man, does Blumhouse really love to make these comparisons between this movie and that, just so that whatever product they come out with, they try to get people to, like, they try to hoodwink people into believing that, hey, this movie that we're coming out with is just as good as that film classic that you love just because we say so. They did the same crap when Insidious came out. Oh, it's the new Poltergeist. Let's get a bunch of websites and podcasters and movie critics to say the same thing. Just let's get all of them to say the same talking points. Give me a break, man. And honestly, this childish mentality that they have, manifest queen, they think that somebody is going to make those comparisons, and by somebody I mean the general audience, mainstream moviegoers. They really think that just because they have it in their minds, or they use these talking points comparing whatever trash that they're churning out on a yearly basis, they think that because they themselves talk themselves up into thinking that their film is just as good, or taking the same approach as whatever film classic from yesteryear, they think that automatically other people are going to connect those dots and feel the same way about it. Again, they took the Terminator 2 route with turning the killer android into the hero of the sequel. They thought that that was going to be how audiences were going to receive M3Gan 2.0, just because Blumhouse themselves took that approach, made those talking points, and now the rest of us are supposed to follow their script. That ain't how that works, princess. And honestly, if we're talking about superheroes, Marvel did the same thing. They thought that, who's gonna, now that Chris Evans and Robert Downey Jr. ain't gonna be part of this franchise anymore, who's gonna be the new leader of the Avengers now that Iron Man and Captain America ain't around? Oh, I know what we'll do. Captain Marvel will be the next Avenger leader, just because we say so. So all the good feels that you had with Robert Downey Jr., with Chris Evans, now you can just copy and paste them because we said so. And if it wasn't stupid enough that they thought that some charisma vacuum like Brie Larson was going to be a genuine leader for the Avengers, or that people were going to resonate with her just because she's leading the team now, if that wasn't stupid enough, they did that twice because they thought that Kang was going to be the next Thanos. Oh, just because they say so, right? Just because you think that, right?
It doesn't matter what you think.
Oh my God. Like, instead of learning the lessons from these characters in showbiz, Blumhouse is just following suit with this stupid crap. Like, seriously, man, stop wanting so badly to be part of the cool kids that you're not even paying attention over what all their faux pas, where that leaves them. And speaking of appealing to the mainstream, again, Blumhouse wanted to artificially coronate M3Gan as like some kind of icon for the LGBTQ AARP collection. I don't even know what the hell they're going by these days. Oh my God. Like, again, how stupid do you need to be? So you wanted a superhero and B, a gay icon. Well, how's that going for Marvel? Yeah, how it started and how it's going. Incredible. And it just goes to show that since the 2024 election, where there are people who are shifting gears away from DEI, it really is remarkable to bear witness to how completely out of touch horror is. And I'm not surprised, considering how things have been going in the genre, where people swear up and people swear down that they're the ones with their finger on the pulse of culture, that we're gonna speak about the lived experience of the minorities and the oppressed and underrepresented people. Word. Like, mainstream audiences will not appeal to that because, I mean, if they're not doing it with genres that are mainstream and have mainstream appeal, like action and adventure, why the hell would you think that would happen with horror? You think people are just going to go with it just because you feel the need to virtue signal? Again, everybody ought to take notice over how not just how other studios are responding to DEI, but my God, look at how audiences are responding to it. And speaking of that, seriously, it astounds me to no end how they want to portray these underrepresented characters, right? And it could be whatever racial background, whatever sexual orientation, whatever. But bro, it's laughable to me how whenever you see any kind of representation, it's always stereotypes. Okay, so you want to force the impression that M3Gan is a gay icon. So you just have to use that sassy girl attitude, right? Yeah, I'm sure that appeals to gay men. Well done. Truly. And they do this all the time. Blumhouse, I'm referring to, not just them, but horror in general, Hollywood. Because whenever they tried to appeal to Hispanic audiences with that horrendous Paranormal Activity, the marked ones, they just had such this corny, lame, and borderline stereotypical portrayal of Hispanics, and it was nauseating. And all it ends up with is just racial cliches. So, hey, hats off to you. Congratulations. Moving on. I always thought it was so amusing. And this goes back to the first M3Gan, but also the second one too. The talking points. Oh, this movie taps into our fears of AI and our dependence on technology. What fears exactly are you referring to if you yourself, the native studio, immediately switched gears into the action route? Furthermore, referring to the first film, remind me, what fears were they referring to when you had a kid obsess over a doll? You didn't have adults obsessing over technology, nor did you display our alleged fears around artificial intelligence. Yeah, I got news for you. When people flocked to the theaters to see the first M3Gan movie, yeah, no one left the theaters after watching that overrated flick suddenly terrified of their cell phones, you phony posers. Yeah, that's an L, and your entire premise hinging on cultural relevance was just paid lip service at best. Now, personally, whenever movies like this come out, I for one have to ask the question, and I'm referring to the flop of M3Gan 2. Whenever there is a spin-off, a sequel to an alleged popular film, and then it flops, I always find it necessary to ask the question, was it ever any good to begin with? For instance, Paranormal Activity. Oh my God, set films ablaze and made so much money in X amount of times. The box office that it made compared to the budget. Okay, all right, whatever. And with the exception, like after the third film, they made what? Part 4. They made the marked ones. They came back with the Ghost Dimension, and then they came back a couple years ago with Paranormal Activity Next of Kin. So what is that? 4 films? Yeah, and all of those were poorly received. And to be honest, so was the second one. Paranormal Activity 2 was not well received. So what is that? Out of 7 films, 2 of them were good? Interesting. To me, that begs the question, yeah, was the first one any good or was it overhyped? Let's take another, oddly enough, found footage film, the granddaddy of them all, Blair Witch. They tried 2 separate times in 2 separate decades to make sequels to the Blair Witch, and both times it flopped. Then they tried to make a video game recently, and no one cared. It was poorly received. Call me crazy, but that begs the question, was the first one any good or was it just overrated? And now we have M3Gan. And I'm sorry, but I genuinely think that a line of questioning needs to be asked whenever these properties fail, especially their first sequels. Really, M3Gan, Blair Witch, and Paranormal Activity all saw poor reception to their first sequels, and in the case of those other 2 found footage films, every time that somebody stepped up to the plate with some new idea, it always failed. Curious. So, I'm sorry, but I don't find the excuse, I find it a lame excuse. Anyone claiming that, oh, Megan 2.0 audiences didn't flock to it or it was poorly received because of the change in genre. No, I find it to have been overrated from the jump. And again, the fact that this was a PG-13 movie, it should have been a slam dunk. Forget Blumhouse looking for a safe bet. From a pure merchandising perspective, it should have been a slam dunk on two separate fronts for this film if it was as popular as people claimed. The aforementioned merchandise with dolls, I mean, come on, really? If it was really that popular, this thing should have been flying off shelves. Did you even see it on shelves when you would go to any store, any toy store, Amazon, anything? You didn't. Furthermore, dressing up for Halloween. Really? I've seen plenty of people dress up like Chucky. Don't see it for Megan. To me, those two in and of themselves are reasons why this film, this icon, isn't as popular as people want you to think that it is. So I'll end on this. How is it that the pushback is attributed to there being less of a horror focus on the sequel when the original film was barely a horror movie, let alone scary? Sorry, but that math ain't mathin'. So, I hope you've enjoyed this closer look into what's really going on with this franchise killer, but I had to make this video just because, as happy that I am that it absolutely exposed and embarrassed itself, and hopefully we're not going to be getting, I know that James Wan is supposed to come out with a spin-off called Soulmate at the beginning of next year, but hopefully this just puts the kibosh on this whole project because I found it overrated and certainly overvalued from the jump. Regardless, as far as what's on the scene, I am going to be doing a Dexter Resurrections Episode 1 watch party between 8 p.m. and 9 p.m. today. I'm just going to finish this stream and then prepare for the next stream. I'm eagerly looking forward to the return of Dexter, as well as seeing what new surprises the show has for us. My usual... Well, let me get into coming attractions. My usual schedule for live streaming survival horror games is every Tuesday at 9 p.m. 9 p.m. EST, and that's 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I will be continuing my Midsummer Night stream with a playthrough of Once Human. I do hope that you'll join me for that. Therefore, I've been Inkarnate asking, why is the Mind's Eye Inquisition the place for heated debate? Because I ask the burning questions that inquiring minds want to know. If you're resigned to your fate, time to subscribe to your fears.
Your friends warn everyone.